Hey everyone, welcome to our session at the Highedweb Analytics and AI Summit. We are going to be presenting today on the GA4 struggle is real, recommendations for higher ed. And we're really excited to be here. It's our first time at the Analytics Summit for us at Concept 3D, but we've been longtime members of the Highedweb Association and their other events. My name is Shiro Hattori, and I am the Director of Demand Generation at Concept 3D. I also host a podcast called Higher Ed Demand Gen. I'm going to be joined today with our amazing guest speaker, Nico Brooks. He is the principal and head of analytics at 2 Octobers, which is an analytics agency located here in Denver. They help a lot of higher ed institutions with analytics and their website. Our goal really today is to help you walk away with a slightly better understanding of Google Analytics events, reporting, and the new changes that have come. And with that, for the agenda, we're going to start off first by covering some of the common challenges we see in higher ed and what some of the positive changes from the switch from universal analytics, which I will refer to as UA, has been from UA to GA4. And then I'll pass things off to Nico, and he will start off with giving you some quick tips on customizing navigation. And then we'll cover a little bit about why events have become such a mess and how you can clean them up. Then we'll get into the part that I think everyone is very interested in, which is around creating easy reports to wow your team using different views. And then to go a little more advanced with GA4 today, we're actually going to be covering custom events, custom dimensions, and custom metrics, and how to build reports using those custom events. We actually hosted a similar webinar earlier a few weeks ago on this topic, and we asked our audience where they're struggling with in terms of reporting in GA4. And a resounding majority at 76% said they are really having trouble with reporting in GA4. So I hope that you're not alone in this journey, and that I hope that our reporting section is going to be providing some value for you here today. Before we jump in, I do have a quick message from our sponsor here today. Concept 3D is sponsoring this presentation, and Concept 3D helps power higher education. We have over 4 million users on our platform every year, not just students, but parents, any visitors of campuses, their constituents, local community members. We also serve over 700 campuses, and our customers love us and our partners love us, which is why we have a very high retention rate. A little bit about the teams that we serve. We help serve teams that have jobs and functions around marketing, admissions, website, and student engagement. And our four main solutions listed here today are our interactive campus map, which we'll actually cover a little bit more in detail later using custom metrics. We also have a centralized events calendar called Localist Events. And then last but not least, we have a virtual tour solution called 360 Tours. And an additional solution that's really catered towards any one of our customers is called My Campus Experience. It actually helps deliver one of any of the three solutions in a personalized approach to your students. All right, let's move on to the agenda. So, I just wanted to identify some of the challenges that Nico and myself see a lot in higher ed. Just to let you know, you're not alone, and we'll have some ways to answer some of these challenges in the upcoming slides. So last July 23, the mandatory switch to GA4 was made. And like many users, including myself, I didn't start actively using the program or the platform until probably sometime around this time of year last year. So, after going from using UA for 10 years, there's still a lot of getting used to just in terms of where buttons are, what are the changes, what are the differences. So, some of this will come with time. In regards specifically to higher ed, many schools and institutions there's many departments, which usually means a lot of different subdomains. And with the fact that there's no more views, which was in UA. GA4 is now limited to accounts and properties only. The thing that used to rely on the most may have disappeared, and how you construct your instance now with no more views is maybe very tricky because you were used to something else. And so I think that's one of the big challenges we see in higher ed as well. Number three is that your instance is a bit messy, right? And specifically calling out events here. We see a lot of GA4 instances where you're tracking a lot of events that have very little meaning or don't understand the meaning of. And so you have a very messy instance, which means very messy reporting. If you have other challenges that you want to share that we can help answer at the end of this presentation, please throw them in the chat. A couple other questions we've heard throughout the weeks is definitely, what metrics are most important in GA4, as well as how do you share reports. So we'll get into a little bit of that as well. Great. So I know there's a lot of challenges that people are facing with change in a new platform, but I did want to highlight some of the positive changes that have come from this mandatory migration or switch to GA4. I've learned with the help of Nico that it's actually gotten a lot easier to customize reports. You're able to create high-level reporting views for your boss and maybe detailed level reporting views to specific folks in your department or below you that only need to look at one specific subset. And so creating these types of reports have actually gotten a little bit easier if you know where to go and how to use it. Another big plus for higher ed specifically is that now subdomains can actually live all in one instance, and you can segment them out through different reporting and custom reports, which is pretty neat because then you can provide high-level reports and you don't have to coagulate everything by working with other webmasters from different departments. Another big point here is that integration with data pools has gotten easier and cheaper, specifically with Looker, BigQuery, and other platforms, which is very nice. I know that with the UA to BigQuery, there is actually a pretty expensive cost associated with that. And if you're a large institution, you're probably tracking a ton of data and you're hitting those limits pretty easily. So that's good. GA4's base, which is on event architecture, versus UA's base, which was based on page views, offers a lot more flexibility in tracking and in data collection. So you're allowed to do a lot more complex things and build things out more customized, which is good for those extremely detailed data analysts here. And just out of the box, there's just a lot more integrations that are tracked automatically. Some to example here are 90% scroll depth, video views. These all come straight out of the box, whereas before you had to maybe set up some complex tracking in Google Tag Manager. And then one that we won't really get into, but is definitely a feature to highlight, is Audiences got a pretty big upgrade in GA4, and now you can use it for many other ways that you couldn't in UA. So that's pretty interesting as well. All right, and with that, I would love to pass things on for the rest of the agenda to Nico, where he will start off with some of his observations he's seen in higher ed and some quick fixes and quick tips he can show you.
So a lot of you, well, most of you said you're struggling with reporting, and I do a lot of teaching and training with GA4. And one of the things I like to say is it's not you, it's GA4. If you're struggling, I do think that there are a lot of things I love about GA4, but reporting in Universal Analytics, the previous version was objectively better. We're going to go through some things to overcome that. And as Shiro mentioned, there are some things that are really, really great about GA4. So we'll talk about some of those as well. So one thing that I really like is that you can customize your navigation to make it work for you, get rid of reports that you don't care about, add reports that you do care about. So we're going to be covering creating custom reports and adding them to navigation. Among other things, we're going to create some custom reports from custom events. So the first thing I wanted to show you is a quick demo of customizing navigation. So let me switch over to GA4. And I'm in the Concept 3D GA4 account or property. And one thing, and you're going to need to have admin or editor permissions to do this. And I'm going to be walking through some demos of ways to set up and improve GA4, make it work better for you. This is recorded as being recorded, as Zero said, and you'll get a link to that recording. And we have some resources at the end of the slides that you'll have that, so don't worry too much if you don't follow everything that I'm doing. So I'm going to click on this library. Well, first of all, let me point out, some of you may have this business objective section of reporting that just sort of appeared one day, or maybe it existed when you created your GA4 property. Google added this. I don't know why. Every property has this lifecycle navigation. Google thought this was somehow more intuitive, but they doubled up. And if you look at the reports in here, they're all the same as the reports here. Another thing in higher ed, chances are you're not selling stuff on your website. So this whole monetization section doesn't actually make sense for you. So a couple things that we're going to start out by doing. I clicked on this library icon down here. And again, you'll see it if you have edit or admin permissions in GA4. And I'm just going to, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this business objectives collection because they're all duplicative. They're the same reports that appear in this lifecycle collection. And then what I'm going to do in this lifecycle collection is I'm just going to get rid of monetization because Concept 3D doesn't sell stuff on their website. So I'm going to save changes to the current collection, go back. And now you'll see over on the left, the monetization section is gone. That business objective section is gone. So already our GA4 instance is starting to make a little bit more sense. Let's see. Okay, now a few things that we're going to talk about depend on an understanding of events. So in GA4, we're going to be talking about built-in events. We're going to be talking about custom events. And just in case you're not too familiar, I wanted to do a quick explanation. Shiro mentioned that a big change from Universal Analytics to GA4 is the idea that it's built around this event architecture versus Universal Analytics, which is really built around page views. And the very first version of Google Analytics really just tracked page views. And they added other capabilities over time, but they're all sort of bolted on. And under the hood, it was fundamentally a platform for tracking when people viewed pages on your website. GA4 it has this idea of events, and there are a bunch of standard events, but you can also create your own events. And so what is an event? It's a little weird. The idea of an event is it's the interaction that you're tracking kind of behind the scenes. And then from events have parameters, and those parameters match to dimensions and metrics in GA4. So in this case, there's a page view event, and that's a standard event that comes when you add the GA4 Google tag to your website. And that has these parameters associated with it. And the page location parameter populates this page path dimension. There's another parameter, this engagement time milliseconds, and that populates this average engagement time metric. So the idea of events is they're mostly under the hood, but the parameters associated with events are what populate dimensions and metrics. And we'll see some specific examples of that as we go through. So one thing I've run into with higher ed properties that I work with, GA4 properties, is that when people migrated from Universal Analytics, Google tried to make your life easier by having this automated migration path. And that tended to create a bunch of superfluous events, like events that came from your Universal Analytics property, but you didn't necessarily care about them, or they didn't make sense in GA4. And so one of the first things that I tend to do when I'm working with a property is go through and look at events and kind of audit them and check and see, do we care about them? And one thing is just to put out to the organization, like, here's a list of events. I think we can delete these ones. If anybody, unless anybody objects, I'm going to go ahead and clean them up. And really, they just add clutter. And in some cases, can actually make your dimensions or metrics really not show the data that you want. So it is a good idea to get them out of there. But part of what we're trying to do is just reduce the confusion in GA4 and clean things up. I'll talk about automatic events in a second, but another question is this event already being tracked by one of the GA4 automatic events? And then there's, can you consolidate events by taking advantage of event parameters? And if you're familiar with events in universal analytics, events had three attributes. They had a category, an action, and a label. Actually, they could have a value, so they could have four. And what Google did when they did the migration is they automatically took the universal analytics event action and made events in GA4 with the name of that action. And that can get really weird, where sometimes those actions are populating, those action values in universal analytics were populated dynamically. And what that resulted in is a ton of event garbage in GA4. So one thing I wanted to emphasize in this topic is, Shira mentioned this, but these are all automatically collected events in GA4. Some make dimensions and metrics work, but they're not really events that you're going to care about per se. They just have to do with how dimensions and metrics are populated. But then other ones like scrolling is automatically tracked. So when a user scrolls down a page, and what that tracks is when a user by default tracks when a user scrolls 90% down a page. File downloads, form starts, form submits, video progress. So really cool. This is really, I think you actually get a lot more out of the box with J4. Yes, it's kind of confusing to work with. The reporting has some limitations, but this is one of the big plus sides. And this is an example of what I was describing is this is a real property I was working with, and it just had tons of events because of this automatic migration. So what can you do? There's a setting in the admin. If you go to admin, data streams, and then click in your data stream to configure tag settings, there's a collect universal analytics events. Make sure that's switched off. You really don't want it. It's going to actually stop working in July when Google shuts down Universal Analytics for good anyway. So that's not doing you any favors if it's still on. You may need to go into Tag Manager to remove unwanted events. In some cases, what people did is they just essentially copied over their setups in Tag Manager to a GA4 property. Really, you want to treat GA4 as a little bit more of a clean slate and be deliberate about what you set up in GA4. And you may also get some events from third-party tools. And in some cases, in my opinion, the benefit outweighs the cost, that it's great that that third-party tool is sending events. There may be some you don't care about, but I wouldn't, you'll just live with those. Next thing I want to cover is how easy it is to create custom reports. And the example I want to give is creating a organic traffic report. So this is something that a lot of people are really interested in, organic search traffic report. So we'll jump back into GA4 just to show you an example of what I mean. So we go to this traffic acquisition report, for example, and this shows the sources that people use when they visit your website. So user acquisition is the first way they got when they first visited your website. How did they get there? Traffic acquisition is how they get there for a given session. And this report is nice, but if I really care about organic search traffic, it's on here, but it's a little hard to really understand organic search traffic specifically. So I'm going to walk you through creating a custom report just to focus on that. So again, I clicked on this library icon, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new report, and I'm going to create a detail report. And I can do one from scratch, but in this case, the dimensions and metrics that are already built into this traffic acquisition template are pretty close to what I want. So I'm going to start with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter to this report, and I'm going to take this session default channel group. So this report is session based. So I'm going to take the session default channel group. And again, what that means is that it's using dimensions and metrics associated with the user's session versus the user themselves, which the user acquisition report is based on. So I'm going to pick that, and I'm going to say exactly matches. And I'm going to say organic search. And then I'm going to apply that. And so now you see organic search here. Now, we don't really need that as a dimension anymore, since it's only going to show organic search. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the session source medium, and I'm going to make that the default. And then I'm going to remove the session default channel group. And now we can see, so now we have just a much better view of our organic traffic. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to say, I'll call this organic traffic acquisition. I'm going to save that. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is how I showed you that we could clean up our navigation. Well, the other thing that's really easy to do is I can take the report that I just created, and I can pop that into my navigation. And there it is. Now I'm going to save that. One thing to be aware of is when you do this, it's going to change it for all users. So you want to be a little bit thoughtful. You don't want to just be creating reports willy-nilly and adding them to navigation, because GA4 can be confusing enough as it is. So now under our acquisition, we have this organic traffic acquisition. So I don't know. I love that. You can really make it fit really the things that you want to understand about your website, get rid of things you don't care about, add things you do care about. One of the nice things about GA4. Shiro mentioned this, and what Shiro described was that there are benefits to GA4 on reporting on subdomains, and specifically the thing that he was describing is that in Universal Analytics we had views, and so you had a GA4 property, and that's where your tracking tag would be associated with the property, but then you could create multiple views. So if you have like different subdomains for different schools, like the law school, MBA program, different programs, this is a pretty common situation in higher ed. What I'm going to show you also applies if you do the same thing, but you do it with folder paths. So like you might have your domain university.com/law/engineering. That may be how it's broken up. And you can do exactly the same thing I'm showing you based on folder paths. In our case, we're going to do it I'm going to show you an example based on subdomains. So really common problem in higher ed. You would have with Universal Analytics typically had different views so that you could really just understand traffic to a specific school or program. Now we can do all of this within an individual property because of the ease of customizing reports and navigation. So I'm going to be showing you an example of that. This slide really just steps through what I'm about to show you. You'll be getting this deck. So I'm not going to talk through the specifics in this slide. I'm just going to hop in. My mouse is a little overexcited, but okay. So now the thing that we're going to do is I'm going to take this traffic acquisition report as an example. And this time I'm going to click this pencil icon and to customize the report. And okay, so I clicked the pencil icon to customize the report. Again, you'll need to have edit admin or edit permissions to do this. Now what I'm going to do is, this is the concept3d.com website, and there's a subdomain, a concept3d subdomain that's resources.concept3d.com. So we're going to create a version of this report that just reports on resources. And in your circumstance, again, that could be you could have a business school subdomain and you're going to do exactly the same kind of thing. So I'm going to filter based on the host name dimension. And then I'm going to say exactly matches. And I'm going to pick this resources subdomain. And one thing I noticed, I'm excited to see there's some chat and Q&A. Maybe Shira, if you see something that is particularly relevant to what I'm showing right now and it makes sense to
Yes,
answer the question, just jump in. But otherwise, we'll
I
try to
got you.
make sure to answer questions at the end. Okay, so now I've added this. I'm going to apply that. So now I'm just looking at metrics and dimensions related to the resources.concept3d.com subdomain. Now, in this case, what I want to do is save this as a new report. So I'm going to say traffic acquisition and resources. Save that.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's been saved. I'm going to go back. Okay, so this report is saved. I'll point out right now it doesn't exist in navigation. Just by saving it doesn't mean it gets automatically added to navigation. If you do this and you you don't want to add it to navigation, you can find custom reports that you create by going to the just doing a search. And let's see, it looks like it's going to make me do the whole thing. Sometimes the search falls a little. Okay, well, it will show up here, but I'm going to show you how to add it to navigation. Okay, so we see this traffic acquisition resources. You may notice I already created a few reports like this just so I can show you the next thing. And really, this is this is so helpful. I find, I mean, this what I'm showing you right now can be so helpful for university GA4 properties. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want to create a new collection, and I'm going to start with I could start with this lifecycle template. I'm actually going to start with blank. Just because I'll have to do a little more cleanup if I start with that. And I'm going to add a topic, position, and I'm going to add topic engagement. And I'm going to title my collection. And I'm going to do something a little sneaky. I'm going to put this 2 here, and then I'm going to name it. And I'll explain why I started that with a 2 in a minute. So okay, now I'm going to get my resources reports. I'm going to populate in here the pages, landing pages. So what I'm doing is I'm just recreating my lifecycle navigation, but specific to these filtered reports. And I'm going to add my user acquisition up here, traffic acquisition. What I'm not doing right now is adding overview reports. Those are a little trickier to create. For now, we're going to stick with these detail reports. All right, so I've added those, and I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to go back. Now you're going to see. So the reason that I did this, added this number, is that these collections sort alphabetically on the navigation. So I'm going to publish this, and you're going to see it pop up over here. So now we see that resources. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename my life cycle. I'm going to say, call this one all traffic. And I'm going to save that. Now you'll see. So if you see that, these are sorting alphabetically. So it just helps sometimes, like that little trick, because you can't organize them the way that you want, is just number them and then they'll show up in the order that you want. And so in your case, again, this could be different schools, different programs that you've created navigation for. So I'm just going to click back. I've already saved that. So we go back to reports. Now you see we have these reports. We can look at specifically traffic to that resources subdomain. All right, so the next thing that we want to get into, and I think this is really demonstrates a lot of the power of GA4, is how easy it is to then add your own custom events and metrics. Now, I talked about doing cleanup and how there's all these great built-in events that we get that we didn't get with Universal Analytics. But it is also true that you can add your own events to track specific things. And we're going to be going through an example using Concept 3D map data. So one of the things that's really cool about Concept 3D's tools is they're already set up to integrate with GA4. So they're sending events to GA4 that you can use to create custom reports. So we'll show an example of that. But really what we're trying to do is demonstrate the power of GA4. I mean, yes, it's cool that these things exist in Concept 3D, but you can do something similar with any other tools. Other tools you use may have integrations with GA4, or you may need to set up your own custom events. So we'll talk a little bit about custom events. Some examples of the kinds of things in higher ed, like you may want to have a specific event just for applications to programs, or just inquiries, where requests for information inquiries. Student logins, like if students, maybe you oversee a student portal and you want to track metrics about our students engaging, you may want to think hard about whether or not you want to track their activity when they're in the portal for privacy reasons. That can get fairly personal, but at least understanding if they're engaging with the portal. And there are certainly ways to do that protect privacy if you do want to track engagement within a portal. Chat usage, if you have a chat function in your website, that's another good custom event to set up. So, and we'll talk about Concept 3D. So we'll go through building custom dimensions and metrics a little bit, and then demonstrate creating a report from a custom set of custom events. I showed you before how that page view automatic event that you get when you install the GA4 Google tag has parameters that populate dimensions and metrics in GA4. And I used a couple of examples, but there are actually other dimensions and metrics that get populated by that event. This marker open is an event that the Concept 3D interactive map will send marker open events to your GA4 property if you configure it to do so. And by configure it to do so, what you need to do is just plug in your GA4 property measurement ID, and the rest happens automatically. So it's going to send this marker open. Shiro's going to show you in a second exactly what that interaction is. But then that has these parameters associated with it. And then those parameters populate a marker open metric. It gets populated by this location opens parameter. And then there's an event label, which describes what that map marker is, sort of what it's designating. So maybe I'll let you take over for a second, Shiro, and explain a little
Yep.
more.
Yeah, and so this is actually a screenshot of our interactive map software solution, and it's from Michigan Tech. And as Nico's mentioned, our solutions work hand in hand with GA4, and there's a lot of custom events we've already created internally that get tracked out of the box with GA4. And so again, this is our interactive map, and we've created custom events already ahead of time, which you can find in our help and article base. One example we wanted to show you today is a marker open, which is when someone clicks on one of the icons that you see hovering over one of the buildings, and a little slide from the left-hand column will come up around more information about that building and anything else you want to know about it. And that is what a custom event for our marker open is. Another custom event is tracking those yellow buttons up top. So you can see like there's a related links, majors, degrees, request info, visit, apply. Those are all tracked under a custom event called top bar button click internally. And so this helps you understand how many clicks your map is driving to your program pages or application pages. And so that's really useful information. If you want to go to the next slide here. Yep, those are the examples. Top bar button clicks.
Okay. Do you want me to go back, or are we good
Yeah.
here?
Oh, we're good here. Yeah. If you want to cover this slide.
Yep. Okay. So creating custom events, that's a big topic. There is a resource slide that we'll share with you that goes, it's by one of my favorite analytics resources. It's Analytics Mania. The person behind it is named Julius Fedorovicus. And there's a long detailed article about different ways to set up custom events. That's a huge topic. You're probably already a little overwhelmed, so I'm not going to go into it more. But do feel free to reach out. My contact information is at the end to me or Shiro with any follow-up questions, and we will be sticking around. So we're going to step through these. I'm going to do a quick demo and walk through doing these steps, and we're going to use as an example concept 3D reporting. So let's see. All right. So another property, I'm going to jump into this interactive maps GA4 property to demonstrate this. And what this is a concept 3D property that's collecting map interaction data, which is similar if you're using concept 3D, you should hopefully you're getting this data into your GA4 account. The first thing that I want to show you is I'm going to go to reports in navigation. I'm going to click on this real-time report just because I think this is sort of helpful to understand what we're looking at. So if you go to this real-time report, and this shows people that have been engaging with the property in the last 30 minutes, we have this event count by event name. And down here, we have this marker open event, and this is the one that we're talking about. And I just showed you, so if we look at this marker open event, I mentioned this location opens parameter. There's other map parameters I didn't talk about just to keep things simple, but it actually had like many of the concept 3D events, GA4 events have a bunch of really rich information attached to them that you can do some really sophisticated reporting. We're going to show a fairly simple example, but hopefully it'll give you a sense of the power. And again, this is not like just a concept 3D infomercial. Like that is cool, but the thing I love is how flexible GA4 is for whatever it is that you want to report on. So we have that location opens, and if we click on that, this is kind of interesting. So the event parameter value is just 1. And what that means is that every time that marker open event happens, it sends a value of this location opens parameter sends a value of 1 to GA4. And so if you imagine that GA4 is summing that up, that represents the number of times that marker open event happened, which is what we want to be able to report on. So the other one that I wanted to show you is if we click through here, There's this event label, and we're going to be looking at this, and this is the actual marker that people are clicking on. So now I'm going to go to this down to the admin section, and I'm going to show you what we did to be able to report on these. So we have these custom definitions under data display in admin. And you see here, we have this event label dimension. And let me just click on the configuration so you can see it. So what this is doing is it's taking the value of the event parameter event label, and it's populating this event label dimension. And you may wonder, like, well, why didn't Google just do all this automatically? Like, if we added parameters, why don't they just automatically create dimensions and metrics? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that some parameters should be dimensions, some should be metrics. So dimensions are things that define what you want to report on, like where a visitor is from, or what platform they came from when they visited your website, and those sorts of things. And then metrics describe what they're doing and how they're engaging with your website, the metrics associated with that. So some parameters might be metrics, some may be dimensions. But the other is, we didn't actually spend much time on this, but it was a bullet on a slide that Shira went over, is you can, for free, export all of your data in GA4 to BigQuery. And there may be circumstances where you don't want all of this detail in your reporting, but you want to grab values from those parameters for further analysis in a database, a data warehouse. So way beyond the scope of this webinar, but really powerful feature. So that's that dimension, custom metrics. And then we have the marker open, which is similarly, if we look at this, what this is doing is aggregating that location opens parameter. And if you recall, that parameter just has a value of 1. So each time the marker open event happens, this increments by 1, so it shows you how many marker opens there were. Okay, so we've added these custom definitions, and we wanted to do this ahead of time, so there's some data collected, so I can show you the next thing, which is super exciting. So now I'm going back to reporting, and I'm going to go to this engagement section. And we created this Concept 3D demo report that now takes that event label. We added a couple of other custom events that show, or I'm sorry, custom metrics that show engagement with the Concept 3D map. But you see these marker opens, and it shows you specifically what somebody was clicking on, which is really cool. So if you have this interactive map, you want to know, like, what are the things that people are engaging with most, that can be super, super helpful for understanding the value you're getting from having this on your website, of course, but also just the nature of things that people are interested in. So hopefully that gives you a taste of the power behind that. I'm going to just so if you're like, okay, there was kind of a leap there. So the things that we're doing in here is, all I did is I just pulled in that custom dimension that we created, and then pulled in the custom metrics. I pulled in a couple of standard GA4 metrics, the users and average engagement time, and then this marker open, link clicks, top bar button clicks are custom metrics that come from Concept 3D. So again, you could do something similar, like let's say that you're really focused on inquiry requests and applications, where you can create custom metrics from those and then add those as columns to your reports. And you could create a custom report, but you could also add them as columns to your standard reports.
Thank you, Nico, so much for that amazing demonstration. I do want to give you and your team a quick shout out here. So, if you're listening and you're interested in any of the services listed here, right, whether it's GA4 reporting setup like we covered here today, SEO, digital advertising, please reach out to 2octobers at 2octobers.com. We actually have personally worked with 2Octobers in the past to help set up our own analytics instance, and they're really a wealth of knowledge here. So please reach out to them. And To our guests, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you at the next Highedweb event, which I believe will be the Accessibility Summit. So we'll see you there. Thank you.